Business district leadership. This is a new thing for a lot of people, and it's very different than a leadership position at a small business that you might have. So why is it different? Well, one of the biggest differences is you're working with volunteers instead of employees. So, you're leading a group of peers who are choosing to donate their free time at the association. So their only incentive to be there is to feel like they are feeling fulfilled and making a difference, and they can leave anytime they get frustrated, and it may be hard to replace them. So it's very important to keep those folks happy. So that's why we're going to be talking a little bit about volunteer recognition, as well as some leadership traits that are useful in business districts. But first, I think it's important to understand the differences between BDA leadership and some of the other leadership roles you might have been in. Other differences include limited bandwidth. So here's a big difference: is everybody that you're working with has their own business to run, which means they've got limited time. And it's going to take multiple people to actually be able to implement complex projects. Some people may try to take on more complex projects, and it's easy for them to get spread thin and careen from crisis to crisis, and that leads to burnout, and that's when you end up losing your volunteers. So as a leader, it's important for you to recognize people's bandwidth, their abilities. Even if they're trying to do good, if they are well-meaning, they might not have the ability to do so, and you want to make sure that you're not stretching them too thin. BDA leadership is different than regular leadership because we're talking about diffuse authority. A president's power is what the board delegates to them, and that is a different type of leadership power than you get in other situations. This leadership comes through your own personal strength and character, rather than your ability to be able to kind of guide the ship. It's also a marathon, not a sprint. So, what you are doing and what your district is doing by trying to strengthen the economy of the district is a complex thing. So what benefits one business in your district may not benefit another. And you may have someone on your board who has very strong opinions about something, but they don't necessarily represent many of the other businesses in the district. So they might have a business where they're the only type of that business in the district. And you want to make sure that people's voices are being heard, but you don't want just the loudest voices to be heard. Everybody's going to have different opinions on what a thriving district looks like. And it's your job as the leader of the district to kind of determine what's best for the district as a whole. Turnover. I mean, this is something that all boards deal with. It's really tough, but it can be a good thing. Turnover is good because it helps your association evolve. You're always bringing in new energy and new ideas, rather than relying on the same folks who may have a lot of history and institutional knowledge, but it's easy to kind of get stuck in doing the same old things over and over again, even if they're not effective, unless you are constantly bringing in recruiting and training new people. You also have to kind of make time to do that stuff. It's not just your job to recruit. Everybody should be kind of working throughout the year to recruit new board members, but you will be tasked with making sure that people are doing their due diligence to do so. And also understanding that it takes time to train new people and get them up to speed. So making sure that you're recruiting before it's actually necessary, just so you have people ready to hit the ground running when their time is needed. So those are the differences between regular leadership you might have in a small business and a leadership in a business district association. So as a leader in your district, how do you thrive? And a big part of that is leading through influence, not power. So we covered a little bit about this, talking about how your typical executive leadership, where you come up with a plan and tell others what to do, won't work. It has to be a very collaborative process for people to feel like they're engaged and want to stick around. So that's your job, to build coalitions, facilitate agreements, and inspire the group to want to participate. You want to find those things that get people excited, and make sure that people are doing things that make them happy, that they have, taking full advantage of their strengths and skill sets, and really making sure that, it seems like a collaborative effort rather than one person just telling everybody what to do. You want to develop a long-term district vision. So all the districts that we work with here at Venture Portland in the Catalytic Investment Initiative program do an annual work plan. And what that does is it kind of lays out an entire year's worth of activities, what they're going to do on a quarterly basis, who's going to be in charge of that, and what the benefit is for the district. And that really helps to keep them on track, make sure that they are kind of planning in advance for things that are coming up. But also, it's a great opportunity to collaborate with the other board members. Coming together to put this document together gives them ownership of what the district is doing. It's your job to kind of facilitate that process, make sure it happens. And if you do have a vision for the district, use your communication skills and your charisma to convince the other board members that the path that you think they should take is the best path. But at the end of the day, that work plan is something that the entire board needs full buy-in on. A lot of districts also do either annually or semi-annually board retreats or strategy summits, where they will plan the direction of the district for 3 to 5 years in advance to really kind of get that 30,000-foot view. So your job as the leader is to kind of keep the BDA on track in the short term, but also take a step back and make sure that the path you're on is going to get you to where you all agreed you wanted to go in the long term. So that's when your persistence and people skills come in to keep the BDA from getting sidetracked by pet projects, tangents, or organizational amnesia, which is doing those same things that they might be comfortable with, but they might not necessarily be effective. Delegate. This is huge as a leader. You may feel pressure to take on the majority of the work in the district, especially if you don't have a staff person to work with. But really, your job is to realize the district vision through the volunteers. Those are going to be your greatest asset. You can't do it all yourself. You shouldn't try. You really want to make sure that you are directing people what to do, making sure they know when it needs to be done, utilizing their skill sets and their strengths. Share the decision making and the leadership and the responsibility with your board. And this makes it feel like everybody's in the district, not just, or it makes it feel like it's everyone's district, not just yours. So this is where committees come in handy, and really just you are the leader of the district, but you can give leadership roles to other people through managing those committees, or serving in an officer role, or just taking on a specific project. So volunteers are going to have conflicts. When you're dealing with a bunch of different people from different backgrounds that have different priorities, you're going to have to manage conflicts and periods of low morale. And a lot of the times over the past 2 years, districts have really seen more and more of this, dealing with the struggles that have been brought forth from the pandemic. So your job is to manage that conflict, create compromises between two people and keep the key players in the fold. So really, once you start to see something bubbling up, you want to intervene and be the mediator. You want to make sure that everybody's voices are heard, but people are communicating effectively and no one's feeling attacked. So this is where your facilitation and conflict resolution skills are really going to come in handy. If you haven't taken a conflict resolution course in the past, it could be really helpful if you're in a leadership role at your district, because you want to be ready to manage these situations and have some difficult conversations. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. You are the guardian of your district's culture. So a lot of the districts that we work with don't really realize that there is a culture, but really all districts have them. They might not just be conscious of it. So a culture in a district is a set of internal behaviors that dictate how you get things done. And you should really strive for a culture that's characterized by trust, integrity, cooperation, passion, continuous achievement, and camaraderie. So these are traits that should be a part of every district's culture, but it's up to you to work with the board to determine the finer points of the culture, because every district is different and has a different set of culture. It really just depends on what is most effective for keeping people happy and being productive. So here's some examples of different types of culture. They range from very hierarchical and very performance focused to more independent and people focused. So having a discussion with the board about what type of culture that you want your district to be is very important in expectation setting. Are you going to be like more of a sports team where it's just trying to get things done as quickly and as efficiently as possible? Or is it more like a tribe where it's really about building relationships and not really focusing too much on getting things done, but really focusing on individual growth? You could be a combination of all four of these, and that's where you're the mountaineering expedition. But you could be any of these, really. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really just what your board wants to be and how they feel like they are more effective in how they're being managed. You got to be tenacious. So there will be ups and downs, starts and stops, but it is your job as the leader to keep at it and don't get derailed by minor issues. Persistence is key here. You really can't be the person who throws in the towel or gives up because everybody else is going to follow your lead. So, keeping positive, really just trying to be conscious of when something isn't working and then thinking about how you can do it differently so it does work is huge in making sure that you're a successful leader in the district. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about leadership skills. So there are a lot of things that you can develop that are important as a leader. But here's about 8 of them that are specifically important for leading business districts. So what I want you to do here is look at these and determine which one you feel like you have a very strong sense of, an area that you are confident in, and then pick one that maybe could use a little improvement personally. And then try to determine what you can do to improve that skill. So some leadership skills that are crucial for business districts are being able to shape solutions in your district. So identifying a problem and coming up with a solution, building relationships and engaging others. So that's where the people aspect comes in, facilitating group action. So this is once there's a plan in place, how are you going to make it happen? Facilitating decision-making, mobilizing, helping others lead, coaching and mentoring. Who's going to be your successor as a leader? And who is another natural leader in your group that could maybe take on a leadership role as the chair of a committee or the lead of another project? Managing conflict. Conflict resolution is a tough one, but again, that's a big part of it. Project management, so really keeping people on track, keeping projects on track, managing timelines. If you've got a big event coming up in the summer, not waiting until June to start planning it, but really making sure people are thinking about those things in January, February. Establishing a thriving culture. And this is something that a lot of districts don't talk about. But as we've seen, there are lots of options for a culture, but you need to really have full buy-in from your board on what you want your culture to be. And then encouraging the heart and emotional intelligence. So really just, this is where your kind of ability to read people comes in. Is if someone is putting off that body language where they might seem overwhelmed or unhappy about something, being able to recognize that and approach them effectively to find a solution. So I want you to look at these 8 skills, pick one that you feel like you have a strong grasp of, and then one that you feel like you can improve upon, and then we'll see if anybody wants to share. So I'm going to just give you 2 minutes to do that. Sorry, I took down the, the skills. Hang on just a sec. Okay, I'll leave that up just so people have that. There we go. All right. So does anybody have a skill that they feel like they are strong in? And does anybody have one that they feel like they could improve upon, and an idea for how they might do that? Does anybody want to share? Tanya, go ahead.
I think I'm really good about building relationships and engaging others. That's super fun for me. And so I think I'm pretty good at that. You also want to hear my fault?
If you're comfortable, sure.
I guess my thing is helping others lead, coaching, and mentoring. I don't have an issue with coaching and mentoring, but everybody tends to have their own opinions of how to lead. And I guess sometimes I have a hard time trying to convince them that their way probably isn't the best way sometimes. So it's navigating that with just, I don't want to challenge them, but it gets a little tricky for me on that one.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Especially in if you're newer in a role, it's hard to be a coach and a mentor because you're still developing those relationships, getting used to the role. How do you kind of step into a new role and act as a mentor? So that's definitely understandable, and I think it becomes easier with time. But that's a great point that you make. It's sometimes if you're new in a role, that can be a challenge. But I think still you could help people to understand that they might be good leaders. So if you recognize that someone has specific skills or traits, helping them find a way to utilize those by saying, hey, we're looking to start this committee. Do you want to be the chair? I think you'd be a really good fit, and here's why. So that's just a way that you can kind of help somebody lead without telling them how to lead, that sort of thing. Great. Anybody else want to share a skill that they feel are strong at, or that they need to improve upon? Hey, Rich, I see your hand is raised.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm also going to claim building relationships and engaging others, although probably not 100% of the time. I've been doing kind of a blitz this week. Visited 30 people so far since yesterday morning, trying to drum up some business. And I've noticed that the places I've gone multiple times, they actually remember me from having gone through about 90 days ago. So that was really nice. As far as being weak, it's like, which one? So I'm going to choose managing conflict, because I feel like that's one where I can find some tangible solutions with suggestions from my laterals and managers here. So.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the toughest ones. Is nobody wants to deal with those awkward situations. And, you know, as a leader, you might feel like you're getting involved in something that doesn't concern you, just by trying to mediate and find resolution. So that's definitely understandable, something that is a skill that takes a while to develop.
Right, and I'm basically the oldest child of a large family, so I'm used to facilitating maybe some dictatorial conflict resolution, and that is not how we operate in the Midway Business Association. So it's always a learning curve there.
Yeah, no, it's it's a family, but a different type of family. So totally.
Much more democratic this way.
Sure, get that. Jacob Loeb, hey.
Hi,
See
how
your
are
hand
you?
is up.
Yeah. I guess for my strong point, I'd say shaping solutions. I'm pretty good about coming up with plans and, being very strategic and write-ups and all that kind of stuff. I kind of fall short on the encouraging the heart, emotional. I have trouble, really selling it on a human level. I tend to come from a business world, which is a lot more make a plan, do it, less of selling the plan, getting people involved, finding the real human element to uh, help enact those plans.
Great. Yeah, definitely understandable there. You know, everybody who's a volunteer is doing it for different reasons, right? So when you're trying to, sell it, what you're selling or the method that you're using might not be something that they're interested in buying. So that's really something that you have to kind of learn on a person-to-person basis before you can really figure out how to be successful in, getting that emotional connection from people. Okay, let's see. I think we got time for one more. I saw Heather's hand is up. Hey, Heather.
Hi there. Thanks so much. This is great leadership that you're putting this together. And I really appreciate what you're bringing to support different organizations. And we, as PDX Main Streets, work to support different neighborhood associations, business districts, and other community organizations to lead and, empower them with tools. It's helpful to see that, got a lot of these things on the list. So it's facilitating group action planning, facilitating, supporting people in these things is particularly a strong thing. But what I would say is a little challenging on the helping others lead, and maybe I'll stick with that one, is that I've discovered that when there is a vacuum of leadership, my natural tendency is to jump in. And so I realized that, and I can see some people laughing or nodding of that. And so what I realize is that if you fill the space, it doesn't allow someone else to jump in who may either be great at that or have an opportunity to become good at it or learn that. And so that is the thing that I am working on, is also allowing that space to remain so that other people can step up.
That's a great point. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes it may seem like that's the easiest solution, right? Is just to do it yourself. But that's rarely what's best for you and for the other people on your board or that you work with. So yeah, it's a little bit more work to find a potential leader and encourage them to take on that role. But in the end, it benefits everybody.
It's gratifying. And as a parent, I would say it's a similar thing. If you do it for your child, then they don't learn how to do it. And they may not do it the way you would do it, or they might not do it. They might make a mess in the process, but that's okay. That's part of the journey of supporting other leaders to grow into that too. So this work is wonderful at building a pathway of other leaders. And so the more we can support that, it's fantastic.
That's right. Teach them how to fish.
Absolutely.
Okay, just have time for one quick comment. Liz, you got your hand up?
I do. I am relating to every single thing everybody is saying here today. So thank you for this. I think one of my like superpowers, it's a quiet superpower, but establishing a thriving culture is what I start with as a leader. Like, let's establish this culture, no matter what the culture was before. I'm going to establish these values. I'm going to show up with these values. I'm going to model them. I'm going to encourage my board to model them so that every time you go to a boosters meeting, you kind of know what the vibe is going to be and what to expect. All of our public engagements carry the same vibe. So that one, I think that I'm good at, and I think it really lays a great foundation for any kind of organization. I'm going to piggyback on what Tanya said, helping others lead, coaching, and mentoring. I think in previous like work roles, that was something I was very good at, but there's such a different hierarchy in a paid like business environment than there is in a nonprofit BDA. And so suddenly you have all these people who are the bosses of their own businesses in the room taking on these roles, and might again think that like this is the best way to do it, or it just creates, it's just a, and it has to be more collaborative, and just getting that across and building leaders who will really, I mean, when you're leading a project or a committee, you're kind of needing to be able to do all the different steps. It's not like, again, there's no hierarchy, everybody's sort of on the same plane. And just making that known or familiar or comfortable is sometimes challenging.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a unique dynamic when you have all your peers are leaders in their own businesses, and everybody has a different idea of how things should be done. So, as a district president, yeah, how do you manage those personalities and help people understand that, yeah, the way that things operate at a business district is much different than how things might operate at a business. So, great points. Thanks, everybody, for sharing. That's really wonderful to hear from everybody. And definitely let's keep the conversation going. But I want to move us forward as we are about halfway through our time here. So let's move on to the next thing I wanted to talk about is leadership types. So this is, the type of leader that you may or may not be. Personality types are very similar to leadership types. So you might be one or two of these, but you're not going to be all five of them. And your job is really to identify which one or two you are, and then think about who in your circle you could bring in that might be a good fit to fill those other leadership types that you may not fit into. So let's take a look at the different types of leadership types. The first is the advocate. So they are the one who sounds the alarm. They are always on top of what's happening in the district, keeping up on all the latest happenings and news. So they bring the issues to the table. They might be communicating with different types of businesses to kind of get feedback from them. And really, they create this sense of urgency and then beat the drum for, what's the most important thing that needs to happen right now. Then you've got the convener. So this is the people person. This is the one that brings everybody together. They're building relationships with businesses in the district. They're building relationships with other organizations and nonprofits in the district that might be a good partner. They're out there meeting people, finding allies, finding ways that you can collaborate to strengthen kind of your impact as an organization. Then you've got the strategist. So this is somebody that, handles all that creative thinking, that behind the scenes stuff. Once you know what you want to do, how's it gonna work and who's gonna do it? Maybe come up with a couple of different options and present them to the group. You got the facilitator. That's the person that helps the group make decisions. So they're going to kind of make sure that those conversations happen and make sure that there's a resolution in those conversations. So there might be a lot of great ideas that come to the table, but if you're not figuring out who's going to do them, when they're going to get done, then the facilitator needs to do that. And negotiation is another big piece of that too. That person can kind of help to bridge gaps between two people that might have opposing opinions. And finally, you've got the champion. So the champion is the person that makes sure the job gets done. They're managing projects and people. They're the one who is tracking all the data. They're the one who's nudging people and reminding them that, hey, remember we asked you to do this. For some people, this might feel like you're being a pest, but this person is essential in a business district because a lot of the times as time goes on, people lose sight of their priorities. They might forget that they need to do something. So having somebody that can keep everybody on track is super important, and that's where the champion fits in. So we're just going to take a minute to just look again at these 5, try to figure out which one you are, and then start thinking about other people in your circle that fit into the other 4 pieces. So just take a minute to write that down and just start, brainstorming on paper. And it might be overwhelming at this time, but something you can think about having a conversation with your board as you're looking into board recruitment and potential leadership pipeline situations where if you are looking to need to find somebody's eventual replacement. And just to remind you again what the different ones mean, I'll just go through those real quick. So advocate raises issues, creates a sense of urgency, beats the drum. Convener finds allies and partnerships, builds relationships. Strategist, figure out what needs to be done, how to get it done. Creative thinker. Facilitator, helps the group make decisions, determines who, what, and when, negotiates. And finally, your champion. Keeps everybody on track, reminds people, tracks data, reports out on it at the end. So those are the 5. And once you've identified the one you are, think about having that conversation with your board to see if you've got others that fit into those other categories. Okay, let's talk a little bit about delivering difficult messages, because this is one of the least fun parts of being a leader of a district, but it is essential. Somebody's got to do it, right? Eventually there's going to be conflict. Somebody's not going to be happy about something, or someone said something they shouldn't have said, or whatever it might be. You've got to identify these things and really nip them in the bud before it becomes a huge problem. Because if someone is feeling attacked or uncomfortable because of someone else's actions, they're going to leave. And if it's somebody you want to keep around, you need to address the issue as soon as it happens. So first thing you want to do when you're delivering a difficult message, keep calm. Their energy is going to match your energy. So even if you are upset, or if this is, a very serious matter, keep your voice and body language neutral. Regardless of how upset you are, a professional tone helps to diffuse emotion. Number 2, don't make it personal. So focus on observable behavior, something that's objective, not subjective, something that's subjective, not objective. You don't want to talk about your interpretations of what they were doing or your personal feelings, but you want to let them know that what they were doing or saying was bad for the district. The opposite can work for giving a compliment. You're not saying, you really enjoyed X, Y, and Z. You tell them that you thought that what they did, X, was something that was really great for the district. So it could go either way, but when you're delivering messages, definitely focus on the district and not how you feel. And you want to be direct, all right? Don't draw this out. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, right? Don't beat around the bush. Really just want to have the conversation about something that needs to change. Being direct gives it more impact. And finally, don't forget the positive. So, you know, having difficult conversations is important, but also, as we'll find out when we talk a little bit about volunteer recognition, people need to hear those positive reinforcements as well. And following this kind of method is a lot more effective than just saying great job. Putting a personal spin on it is more effective when giving a compliment as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about volunteer recognition. So first we need to just identify the different types of volunteers, because all volunteers deserve recognition, but depending on the volunteer type will kind of dictate how you recognize them, thank them, and keep them in the fold. So you've got your one-time volunteers. These are people that might volunteer at a specific event, or you might see them once or twice a year. You've got your short-term skill-specific volunteers. So these are people that are volunteering multiple times throughout the year. You know, they have a specific thing that they're good at, and they are always willing to help out by doing that throughout the year. And then you've got your longer-term committed volunteer leaders. You know, these are your board members and your officers. These are people who are really, you're having regular contact with. They're donating a significant amount of time to the organization on a weekly basis. So how do you thank them? Well, you say thank you. I mean, this is a huge part of it. And you can do this in a number of different ways. But, you know, it's always important to help volunteers feel validated in the time that they're spending. Because as we said before, you know, they don't have to be there, and they need to feel fulfilled in their volunteer role. And sometimes it's as simple as saying thank you. Sometimes it could be a reward or an incentive or an event that celebrate and show off the team's efforts. So what are we talking about? Well, you should be celebrating accomplishments. Show off your volunteers' hard work. Highlight the results and achievements. So track those numbers so you can report out on them on a quarterly, mid-year, end-of-year basis, to really get a sense of all the great things that they did. So we highly recommend tracking volunteer hours, because even, you know, if it seems like on the surface the district didn't do a whole lot during a specific period of time, just the fact that they're showing up is worth mentioning. But you can also track, you know, things like fundraising. You know, we raised X amount of dollars through this, or, you know, you can track your membership. You know, we brought on, you know, 5 new members thanks to the hard work of this person. Quantifying it always kind of puts things into perspective. And they help you show growth, right? You're making progress, even though, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it may not seem like it. You're able to kind of point to those numbers to show that. So recognizing volunteers, everybody prefers to be praised in different ways. Some people really enjoy a public recognition, and some people prefer to have private recognition. So really getting a feel for what people's preferences are at the very beginning is going to kind of dictate how you go about this. But some ways you can do it include using social media and sharing photos of the volunteers in action. You could do individual recognition at events. So that could be something as simple as, you know, presenting someone with a bottle of wine or a certificate or trophy, or, you know, just doing a quick profile on them in a newsletter, or just giving them an opportunity to speak at a meeting about their experience. All these things can be effective in making sure that you're recognizing your volunteers. The most important thing is you want to appreciate the person, not just their work. So as I said, thank the volunteers just for showing up. Because even if you didn't do all that much, or you did something and it wasn't all that much of a success, they still spent their time. And I think that's worth acknowledging. They show up, they bring their skills to the table, and they care about the area that they live and or work in. And that in itself deserves recognition. So you want to build gratitude into your meeting culture. And this can be done by just taking 5 minutes at the beginning or end of each meeting, go around the room and invite your team members to express gratitude or pride for something in the district. Give them a chance to talk about something positive that happened to them or something that happened at their business, to really make this a part of your culture. Keeping positive, in the past couple of years, that has been exceedingly difficult. We've had a lot of challenges as a city and individuals, and sometimes we forget to stop and really recognize what's positive happening. You want to be an active listener. So this is a huge part of making volunteers feel recognized, is understanding why they're there. Everybody volunteers for different reasons. Why are they interested in spending their time at the association? Is it because they want to boost their business? Are they interested in improving their community? Do they want to connect with their neighbors? What are they trying to get out of this experience? And once you know that, as a leader, you can find a role for them that will make them feel fulfilled and can address any concerns that they might have. If people feel fulfilled in their volunteering, you can turn, a one-time volunteer into an invested leader. And this is where the relationship building comes in as well. Volunteer recruitment, finding the right roles for the right people and utilizing their skills. And as I just said, learn your volunteer special interests or skills. What can they bring to the table? If they don't already know these, help identify them. So, so a lot of people are modest and they feel like, they don't feel comfortable talking about their strengths. So having, a personal conversation with them about what their interests are, what accomplishments they may have achieved at their business can help translate in what they can do for the association. You always want to encourage the sharing of ideas, suggestions, and feedback. So, as we said at the beginning of the presentation, as a leader, you are not a one-person show. You want to always be trying to get buy-in and suggestions from the other people on your team. You also want to make sure that they're happy, that they feel like the association is on the right track. So you need to have a way of collecting anonymous feedback regularly. This will allow you to really get some honest ways to hear about how they feel. Do they feel like they're wasting their time? Do they feel like the association's not on track? Not everybody is comfortable bringing that up in a meeting or even comfortable sending an email. Sometimes it has to be anonymous. So setting up some sort of online survey, or if you meet in person, a Dropbox of some kind, just so you can kind of get an idea of where everybody's at. Make everything clear. So you should always have a board orientation at the very beginning for your new board members to kind of help set those expectations, present them with all the information they're going to need for the next year or two, including contact information. If people have questions, who do they go to? Is it you? It might depend on what kind of question. So you might say the financial questions go to the treasurer and the events questions go to the events chair. Making it clear and having a contact list that is given to the board members at their orientation at the very beginning is going to make your job so much easier, because you're not fielding questions that you don't either have time or you don't have really the involvement to answer. So that's a great option to have as well. Speaking of time, you want to be mindful of their time. So everybody has a different idea of how many hours they can invest into an association. So really, this is another thing of expectation setting. ask volunteers how many hours they can dedicate to a project and realistically estimate how much time any given task will take. So if you are looking at doing board recruitment, coming up with a job description. We have templates of board job descriptions that you can use that specifically says, you know, as a board member, you'll be expected to donate 4 or 5 hours a week or whatever it might be to the board activities. And this will help you kind of set those expectations and make sure you're getting the right people in those positions that aren't going to get burnout and overwhelmed, you know, right off the bat, and then you'll have to scramble to find the replacement. So you really want to make sure that they have a good idea of what's going to be expected of them. And if they, you know, are interested in only doing a smaller amount of hours every month, then you'll have an idea of, okay, maybe we can find a committee position for them, or maybe they can handle this one specific duty that happens on a monthly or quarterly basis. So really getting an idea of that up front is going to help you delegate and guide them to the best role for them. And they will thank you for that. Finally, you got to create teams to work on heavier lifts. This is where committees come in. This is where you know, you're really going to be able to get things done, you know, rather than relying on one person who might get overwhelmed. Help them avoid burnout. You know, show some concern for their well-being and make an effort to lighten their load when needed. So this is where, you know, recognizing those signs of burnout come in handy. If someone is, you know, really seeming like they're tired, or they're not showing up, or they're just, yeah, they show certain signs of not being able to complete what's been asked of them. As a leader, it's your job to kind of go in there, have that conversation with them to see if they need some help. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to help, but I think you need to facilitate making a connection of finding someone to help or finding a different role for them. Okay, so I've been talking a long time. Let's turn it over for questions or comments, or does anybody want to talk about you know, their experience as a leader in their district? Heather, hey, I see your hand up.
Hi there. I just wanted to mention that, you know, it's always hard to get volunteers. We have lots of people who plug in at different times with great skills. But one thing we discovered was that aligning with universities, such as Reed College has federal work study paid student interns. So they're not doing it for free. They're getting paid to do the work, but they're also great, talented people that are, we teach them, they teach us, and it's a wonderful reciprocal relationship. And so I just wanted to mention that as a strategy that has really been significant for us, to be able to focus less on some of the small stuff and be able to focus more on the high level strategic work that we want to do. So I just wanted to share that approach.
That's a
But I
great
look forward to
idea.
learning from others too about how you bring in those kinds of volunteers.
And that's, you know, with colleges, you can really focus in on specific skill sets, you know, whatever their major might be, that will automatically set them up to go into a role where they feel comfortable or they feel energized, and, you know, they're feeling fulfilled as well, because it's, you know, predetermined that, you know, they have a background, or they're looking to get more information on a specific subject. So it's a great fit.
And there's also been, you know, I would say ongoing relationships built there too, where, you know, we end up writing them letters of recommendation for different jobs, and, you know, then they come back there, you know, so it creates lasting connections too within the community, as well as in different, you know, sort of age groups. And it's been really, really wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, great tip for volunteer recruitment. Even though, you know, they might only stick around for a semester, they're going to be engaged.
And they tell other students too.
Yeah.
You get more.
Okay. Is it Lisa?
It's Lisa.
Hey,
I
Lisa.
was just
how's it going?
gonna build on what Heather said. We've actually had success at the high school level. I've worked with the accounting teacher and have had accounting students that come, they're fourth year students. And they come and work in the office during their class period. So the school's close enough that we get an hour, hour and a half of their time, because it's usually seniors who've got an open period or, lunch or something. But in fact, one of them went off into the world for a couple of years and came back as our office manager. So it's been a real good pipeline, and they're happy to learn spreadsheets and PowerPoint and things that aren't Google, because that seems to be the school has strictly moved to Google everything. So that's a skill. And we've also had some luck working with some of the sports programs. The wrestling team moved our giant inflatable screen, and it only cost a little pizza. And then they also maybe will come back and watch our movies in the park in the summer, because now they've got a connection with it. Scouts are yet another group that we work with here. They put flags out a dozen times a year, and they also do the beverages and ice cream at our movie event in the park, which used to be on our volunteers, and at $1 an item. We didn't make anything, burned out volunteers heavily because it's quite a long evening considering when nightfall is in the summer in Oregon. And now the Scouts are happy to be there and more enthusiastic about a family movie than some of our grown-up volunteers. So it's a good pairing. So
I love this. Thinking outside the box, outside of our regular volunteers who, are business owners with very limited time, thinking about, who else in the community would be interested in donating their time. And yeah, I love this idea of, reaching out to the high schools, the colleges, and the other social groups to get them involved, even if it's, a one-time thing, a one-time event, helping out with that, or, organizing a cleanup, something like that. Everybody's going to really have different interests and capacity and abilities, but there's plenty to be done. It's just, your role as a leader is finding the right fit for them. So it all starts with, starting to build that relationship with the entity, whether it's a school or a group like that. Yeah, Nana.
I will say one thing with volunteering. Some business owners, they may not have the hours to lend, but they have the resources and the space to lend. And so that's a huge thing that I noticed being out in the districts, that there's a lot of need and willingness to want to be able to participate and help in certain areas. And although maybe time may not be of the essence, they have the space, or, the hours to give, or the dollars, if you will, to in-kind donations and things like that. So that's another thing to think about.
Yeah, if they can't donate time, give them other options. On your membership recruitment form, is there a space to donate sponsorship dollars or in kind? Maybe there's a space where you ask if they would be interested in donating their space for a meeting or an event. Yeah, really trying to cast as wide of a net as possible to get people involved. And a lot of the times, that will be kind of the catalyst that gets them more and more involved in the future. Is, maybe you have a meeting at their business, and then the following year, maybe they're interested in joining the board because they saw, how effective or how fun the meeting was, and they wanted to get more involved. A lot of the times, people don't know really what to expect out of these groups. So you need to look for ways to kind of give them a taste of what to expect, and develop that relationship over time without having to make that big ask right at the beginning, which can scare a lot of folks off. So we got about 2 minutes left. Let's see, I just saw something in the chat here. Banks and other businesses have volunteer programs. I think we had somebody from IQ Credit Union here. I don't know if they're still here, but they've always been super involved in business district stuff. Anybody else have anything to share before we end for the day? I wanted to just let everybody know while you're still here, before I forget, that we've got another webinar coming up on March 9th. This is from our events hub. They're going to be talking about event permitting and insurance. Excuse me, and they're going to have a guest from PBOT talking about that stuff. So mark your calendars, March 9th, noon to 1 p.m. right here on Zoom. We're going to get you ready for your summertime events. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so with that, I think that's it. We're at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for coming. And please come out to our next webinar. And if there's anything that you have questions about, certainly let me know. Otherwise, I'll be following up via email. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jacob. Great presentation.